A planner-scheduler is responsible for translating organizational objectives into executable schedules that align resources, timelines, and budgets. The role blends analytical planning with on-the-ground coordination, ensuring tasks are sequenced efficiently, dependencies are transparent, and risks are proactively managed. In interviews, candidates are assessed on their ability to develop baselines, maintain critical paths, optimize resource utilization, communicate with stakeholders, and adjust plans as conditions change. This guide provides common interview questions, sample answers, and tips to help candidates present themselves as precise, reliable, and value-adding planning professionals. Employers look for planner schedulers who can build realistic schedules in tools like Primavera P6 or Microsoft Project, analyze variances with earned value methods, and drive alignment across engineering, procurement, construction, maintenance, and operations. Strong candidates demonstrate data integrity, change control discipline, and clear reporting that informs decisions. Structured answers with concrete examples and measurable outcomes showcase technical rigor, communication strength, and a commitment to delivering projects safely, on time, and within budget. Understanding the role of a planner scheduler. A planner scheduler develops and maintains project or maintenance schedules, defines work breakdown structures, sequences activities, estimates durations, and allocates resources while managing constraints. They identify the critical path, analyze float, and track progress via status updates and performance metrics. The role requires close coordination with project managers, discipline leads, procurement, and field teams to ensure plan feasibility and timely issue resolution. Effective planner schedulers uphold change control, integrate risk registers and mitigation plans, and communicate schedule health through dashboards and narrative reports for informed decision-making. Question 1. What are the key responsibilities of a planner scheduler? Here's how you can answer. The core responsibilities include building and maintaining integrated schedules, defining scope through a clear WBS, sequencing tasks with logic ties, estimating durations and resource needs, and identifying the critical path. I track progress, analyze variances, and update forecasts using methods like EV, SPI, and CPI. I facilitate coordination with stakeholders, maintain change control on baseline adjustments, and communicate status via dashboards and weekly reports to support proactive decision-making. Tip: emphasize WBS clarity, critical path management, variance analysis, and stakeholder communication. Question 2. How do you develop a realistic baseline schedule? Here's how you can answer. I begin by validating scope and deliverables, then create a WBS that aligns with the estimate and contract. I gather inputs from discipline leads for durations, resources, and constraints, and I structure activities to be measurable and statusable. I add logical relationships with minimal leads, lags, integrate procurement and long-lead items, and run a critical path analysis. Before baseline approval, I perform schedule quality checks, looking at open ends, negative float, excessive constraints, and missing resources, then review with stakeholders for sign-off. Tip: highlight collaboration, quality checks, and governance for baseline approval. Question 3. What tools and techniques do you use for scheduling? Here's how you can answer. I primarily use Primavera P6 and Microsoft Project for building and maintaining schedules. For analytics, I use resource histograms, S-curves, and look-ahead reports. I apply earned value to integrate cost and schedule, use critical path and near-critical analysis, and perform what-if scenarios to test mitigation strategies. I also leverage schedule quality metrics like DCMA 14-point checks to ensure integrity. Tip: mention specific tools and quality frameworks, not just generic capabilities. Question 4. How do you handle schedule risk and uncertainty? Here's how you can answer. I start by aligning with the risk register, associating schedule activities with identified risks. I quantify impacts where possible and add mitigation activities or resource buffers. For high uncertainty projects, I run Monte Carlo simulations to understand P50 and P80 dates and communicate contingency needs. I monitor risk triggers and update response plans during weekly reviews, ensuring early action before dates slip. Tip: connect qualitative risk management with quantitative methods and clear communication. Question 5. How do you manage critical path and near critical activities? Here's how you can answer. I track critical and near critical paths weekly, monitoring float and actuals against planned progress. I use look-ahead windows to ensure prerequisites are ready, permits, materials, and access. If float is eroding, I propose resequencing, adding shifts, or resource leveling while aligning with safety and budget constraints. I brief stakeholders on trade-offs and document approved changes through formal change control. Tip: show proactive monitoring and practical mitigation aligned with constraints. Question 6. How do you integrate procurement and long lead items into the schedule? Here's how you can answer. I create detailed procurement chains, RFQ, bid evaluation, PO placement, manufacturing, inspections, shipping, customs, and site delivery. Each is statusable activities with clear predecessors. I align them with engineering deliverables and construction need by dates, adding buffers for logistics variability. Weekly supply chain check-ins ensure we adjust the plan quickly if vendors report delays. Tip: demonstrate granular logistics planning and cross-functional coordination. Question 7. Describe your approach to resource planning and leveling. Here's how you can answer. I begin with a resource-loaded schedule using realistic crew sizes and productivity rates. I generate histograms to spot overall location and smooth peaks through leveling within available float. Where leveling affects critical path, I evaluate alternatives, shift work, subcontracting, or resequencing. I coordinate with functional managers to confirm availability and capture commitments in the plan. Tip: balance mathematical leveling with operational feasibility and stakeholder buy-in. Question 8. How do you track progress and report performance? Here's how you can answer. I collect weekly status from field leads, percent complete, actual starts, finishes, quantities installed, and impediments. I update the schedule, run variance and trend analyses, and produce SPI, CPI where earned value is used. My reports include milestone slippage, critical path shifts, near critical watchlist, and 3-week look-aheads. I add a concise narrative on drivers, risks, and recommended actions. Tip: combine quantitative metrics with qualitative insights and clear next steps. Question 9. How do you handle change control and rebaselining? Here's how you can answer. I document all change requests with scope, cost, and schedule impacts. After analysis, I present options with pros and cons for approval. For significant, approved scope changes or major external events, I establish a controlled rebaseline, preserving historical data for trend analysis. Minor changes are tracked as revisions without resetting performance unless thresholds are met. Tip: stress discipline, transparency, and traceability. Question 10. Can you give an example of recovering a slipping schedule? Here's how you can answer. On a maintenance turnaround, we were 3 days behind due to late materials and unexpected field conditions. I ran a what-if analysis, resequenced non-critical tasks, added a second shift to a bottleneck activity, and pulled forward inspections by coordinating earlier access. This recovered 2.5 days without increasing safety risk, and we closed the remaining gap via concurrent punch list activities. Tip: use a concise STAR example with clear actions and measurable results. Question 11. How do you ensure schedule data quality and integrity? Here's how you can answer. I apply standard checks, no open ends, minimal use of constraints, realistic durations, and accurate calendars. I run quality metrics such as DCMA checks, verify coding structures, and ensure activity descriptions are specific and statusable. I lock logic changes behind review gates and maintain an audit trail for all updates. Tip: emphasize repeatable standards and auditable processes. Question 12. How do you coordinate with cross-functional teams? Here's how you can answer. I facilitate structured weekly planning sessions with engineering, construction, procurement, HSE, and operations to validate progress and upcoming constraints. I circulate pre-reads with variances and decisions needed, then capture actions with owners and deadlines. This cadence keeps the schedule grounded in field reality and ensures rapid escalation when constraints threaten critical milestones. Tip: show meeting discipline, action tracking, and escalation paths. Question 13. What is your experience with maintenance planning and CMMS integration? Here's how you can answer. I integrate preventive and corrective work orders from CMMS systems like SAP PM or Maximo into a resource-feasible weekly schedule. I group jobs by location or trade to reduce travel and changeover time, align permits and parts availability, and use look-aheads to pre-stage materials. Post-execution, I capture actuals for feedback into duration norms and reliability metrics. Tip: connect planning to reliability, craft utilization, and continuous improvement. Question 14. How do you estimate activity durations and productivity? Here's how you can answer. I use historical data, vendor inputs, and crew productivity norms adjusted for site conditions, learning curves, and access constraints. I validate estimates with discipline leads and perform sensitivity checks. For novel scopes, I pilot with a small sample to calibrate the plan before full rollout. Tip: anchor estimates in data and expert validation with feedback loops. Question 15. How do you communicate schedule status to executives versus field teams? Here's how you can answer. For executives, I present milestone trends, risk exposure, and impact on cost and delivery dates with clear red, yellow, green indicators and a succinct action list. For field teams, I provide detailed 3-week look-aheads, constraint logs, and specific handoffs. Tailoring detail level ensures each audience gets actionable information without noise. Tip: show audience-aware communication and focus on decisions. Question 16. How do you incorporate safety and quality into scheduling? Here's how you can answer. I embed safety-critical steps and quality hold points as explicit activities with mandatory predecessors and inspections. I avoid unsafe overlaps by reviewing congestion and simultaneous operations, coordinating permits and isolations. I prioritize durations that respect safe work practices over aggressive but risky assumptions. Tip: reinforce that schedule success never compromises safety or quality. Question 17. How do you balance schedule compression with cost and risk? Here's how you can answer. I evaluate fast tracking and crashing options by analyzing incremental cost per day saved, resource availability, and risk to rework or quality. I present scenarios with quantified trade-offs and recommend the option that meets business priorities while maintaining acceptable risk. Approved changes are tracked against the baseline with clear variance reporting. Tip: demonstrate analytical rigor and business acumen. Question 18. Why should we hire you as our planner scheduler? Here's how you can answer. You should hire me because I combine strong technical scheduling skills with practical field coordination. I build quality baselines, manage critical paths, and use data-driven risk and variance analysis to keep projects on course. I communicate clearly across levels, uphold change control, and deliver actionable plans that align resources, safety, and budget to achieve reliable outcomes. Tip: summarize technical depth, communication effectiveness, and delivery mindset. Common mistakes to avoid: overusing hard constraints instead of logical ties, which hides true float and distorts the critical path. Ignoring procurement and permitting lead times, resulting in optimistic schedules that collapse during execution. Failing to perform regular quality checks and trend analysis, allowing issues to accumulate unnoticed. Resource loading without verifying real-world availability, causing unfeasible plans and late surprises. Reporting data without clear narrative or actions, leaving stakeholders unsure how to respond. Final thoughts. Planner scheduler interviews evaluate your ability to translate scope into an executable, risk-aware plan that holds up under real-world conditions. By demonstrating mastery of WBS development, logic-driven sequencing, critical path and near-critical monitoring, and earned value analysis, you show that you can keep stakeholders aligned and projects predictable. Clear reporting, disciplined change control, and proactive risk mitigation separate effective planner schedulers from reactive ones and ensure consistent, on-time, and safe delivery.